about you. They all say you're very hardworking and determined, but also tough and sometimes uncompromising. And you've read these same things I've read. Some people are speculating you might have an authoritarian streak. So are you the right man to build consensus?
I think I have a history of building consensus, and majority of the people who have worked with me have come to appreciate that, yes, I am firm, I am determined, I am focused, and is the only reason I have gotten myself here, by being resolute, determined, and focused, because unless you are that firm, you can get nothing done. But the consensus I have built to win this election should confirm to you and all that I am a consensus person. I wouldn't have put together the team that gave me the opportunity to win this election.
We said the election was largely peaceful, but you remember 2007, a very bloody election. Over 1,000 people were killed. And I don't have to remind you that after the violence you were indicted by the International Criminal Court. And we have to say those charges of crimes against humanity, they were all later vacated. But I'm asking you now whether you worry that that affects in some way the way members of the international community might view you now.
Well, the members of the international community are knowledgeable people, or so I expect. And the law in Kenya, and I guess it's the law, universal law, is that allegations can be made about anybody. And allegations are allegations, unless they are proven. And if allegations are not proven, then it means they just remain rumors and insinuations. The people of Kenya, I didn't get here by any other means, but by choice. The people of Kenya went to the ballot in 2013, chose President Uhuru and myself as his deputy, the same thing in 2017. I ran in this election. The people of Kenya know me that well to make a choice as to what kind of a person I am. I know the international community may carry a bit of that baggage, but I think over the years, many of them have come to realize that I am not the person that was being described in those judges.
In your election campaign, you differentiated yourself from other political figures in Kenya. The former President Kenyatta, who was the son of Kenya's first founding president, and your opponent Raila Odinga, who was the son of Kenya's first vice president. And you made the point that you came from a very humble background. You were selling chickens as a child. I think I read you got your first pair of shoes at the age of 15. How does this background, how's it going to affect the way you're going to govern?
My background gives me the worldview understanding, if I may say it, of what the issues are. And by virtue of the opportunity I have gone through leadership as a member of parliament, as a minister before, as a deputy president, it also gives me a vantage point on solutions to the challenges that face our country.
Your campaign clearly cut through. It was a great success, but now perhaps the difficult bit. You were riding a wave of high expectations. Now you've got to deliver, and you have come to power at a time when the economy, not just in your country but around the world, is in dire straits. You're facing a global fuel crisis, I agree. President Kenyatta has put subsidies, when he was president, to try and support people with food and fuel. Are those sustainable economically much longer?
They're not, and that's why I removed them. In fact, the whole subsidy regime was a drain on our development resources. Over the last 3-4 months alone, we spent 140 billion Kenyan shillings on subsidy. When I came into office, the first assignment I had was with the energy sector. And I looked them in the eye and asked them whether this was going to go on, because we were spending 16 billion shillings, money we didn't have, every month on fuel subsidy. I put a stop to it, and the people of Kenya understood that it wasn't in their best interest to continue with fuel subsidies. There are a couple of other things. I made a commitment, for example, that we are going to enhance the financial independence of our judiciary so that we can better place the country at a vantage position for investment where commercial disputes could be decided upon in the shortest time possible. I appointed 6 judges that were outstanding. I have had a discussion with our judiciary, and we intend to expand the scope of independence of our judiciary so that they can do more with the resources that they have. And now they don't have to depend on the executive. They have their own independent budget. I did the same with the police. For a long time, the police were dependent on the office of the president. And what officials did was, if they didn't want a certain case to be investigated, they didn't provide resources for it. I have now, in the last 2 weeks, I have removed the budget of the police from my office, and now they run an independent budget, an independent mandate. They can investigate whatever cases they want. They have to deal with security in the manner in which they figure out, and my government will be there to support them. We are making changes, some of which do not even require financial resources. There is a lot that we're going to change. I have just told you, next week we are going to rework the whole credit rating system, because the current one is all or nothing. You're in or out. And we have 15 million stranded, 15 million Kenyans stranded because of a simple decision that can be made to change, to keep the credit reference bureaus, but change the scoring mechanism so that it's not all or nothing. There is a lot that we are going to achieve just by changing policy, not necessarily even going to look for additional resources. Re-engineering the use of the resources we are already using so that we can get best value out of it.
As you know, the region is facing a very serious humanitarian situation, which is the drought, the worst drought for 40 years. There's talk of famine in Somalia, Ethiopia. What about northern Kenya? Are you worried?
We have 3.1 million Kenyans in northern Kenya that are in dire need. In fact, we have had to reorganize our budget so that we can deploy resources for food relief in those areas. They have not harvested the last 4 years. They've had failed rains for the last 4 seasons. 70% of their livestock they have lost. And therefore it is a real serious situation. That is why Kenya is championing, is providing leadership on matters to do with climate change, because we are living it every day. We can see it on our faces every day, the effects of climate change. And that's why Kenya will be looking at COP27 to provide the framework where financing for climate adaptation, for climate mitigation. 13 years ago, pledges were made for $100 billion every year. Nothing has been forthcoming. I think it's time for us to have a candid conversation with our partners, with the international community, especially those of us from the continent of Africa, where we are bearing the brunt of the effects of climate change without any support. I was asking the multilateral financial institutions to rethink, because many countries are reorganizing their budgets to provide for climate change effects rather than their development. Even areas like education and health are beginning to suffer because you have to direct resources to keep people alive, to provide food, to provide water. And so that's no longer a very simple matter. That's why those of us from the global south, specifically from Africa, want a real candid conversation on climate change and how we can deal with the people that are affected, how we can deal with the situations that are emerging, and the reality that we have to live with every day of people who are in dire need.